Yes, where I wish that they bleeped the whole thing.
You mean just like the writing's
Just
bad?
just.
Aw, Big Bang Theory. What? Okay, but speaking of shows that might need a lot of bleeping, Sopranos. You said that they might be back with a prequel?
Yeah, so it's trending on Twitter right now. It looks like there's going to be a prequel directed and written by David Chase, who wrote this. He was the head runner of the series, the showrunner for the series, and it's called The Saints of Newark, I believe, is the title at the moment. And so it's a prequel about Tony's father, Johnny Boy, in 1960s Newark, which was a time where there were a lot of race riots. And the Italian American community and the black community were really at each other's throats during that time. And so, it's going to have Johnny Boy Soprano, Livia, who was Tony's mother, and I think Uncle Junior is going to show up too. And David Chase declined to go too much into the plot, but it seems like other characters from The Sopranos are going to make an appearance in it.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say it'll be interesting to see if Tony Soprano comes back, but that's kind of impossible. I forgot Gandolfini died, sadly.
Right, so, Like when The Sopranos ended, there was a lot of talk about, will there be a Sopranos movie? And then that was the conversation for a long time. And then he died, and it was like, well, I guess that answers that question for it. Yeah. Although I think the show, I thought, it just ended on such a beautiful, pitch perfect note. I thought that a lot of people were upset with the finale because he, just goes to black all of a sudden. I interpreted that as that he was shot in the head by the guy coming out of the bathroom, and so because that last shot is from his eye line, from his point of view. So I read that as someone that's him losing his consciousness right there, and. That's why it goes to black suddenly. Yeah, so The Sopranos, that always dealt with Catholicism in its own interesting ways. Any thoughts about how it handled faith, Mike? And do you think they'll do anything different if this kind of show, like with the times we're in? It seems like TV is starting to open up to more positive takes on religion, with biblically speaking and or living biblically. And there's a show, Kevin Saves the World, we're going to look at in a couple weeks and stuff like that. So do you think they'll handle it any different, or? That's an interesting question. David Chase is really good at writing about characters who are having an internal crisis, kind of an internal struggle of faith. And Tony Soprano is one of the all-time best examples of that. His family's Catholic, and yet he commits all these egregious crimes, being a mafia member. And he's a guy who he wants to make changes in his life and find happiness, but he doesn't want it badly enough. And every time that Tony seems like he's starting to turn a corner and make a change for the better, he ends up just going back to what he was. And actually, a really fascinating thing about that finale for me is they're sitting there, the whole family's in the diner together having dinner, and Tony's son AJ says, "Remember the good times, right?" Uh-huh. And Tony says, "Are you being smart with me right now?" And AJ said, "No, you said that once." And it was something that he had said in the first or second season. Huh. And Tony goes, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I guess I did say that." And it shows you, like, whenever he has kind of a revelation in his life, it doesn't stay with him, and he just takes steps backwards.
And also, that show that famously faded out on Don't Stop Believing, correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder whether that had anything to do with faith or lack of faith or anything like that, believing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or was it just a catchy song that was played way too much as a result?
Might have been little column A, little column B. That's a good point, because the song is telling you don't stop, and then it stops.
Yeah.
Which, shows you, like, if you want your life to be a certain way, but if, karma comes around, and if you don't... if you don't make changes, it's going to come and get you.
Oh, yeah. So speaking of HBO shows, a great one right now, probably not as great as The Sopranos, but really good show is Crashing. We keep talking about it almost like it's the Matt Damon of our Jimmy Kimmel show here, because we keep bouncing it every week. But
right, yeah, not quite as critically acclaimed as The Sopranos is, but it's very, very, very good show, very funny show. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it takes a look at, it just got renewed for season 3, and it takes a look at the life of real life comic named Pete Holmes playing himself in a slightly fictionalized way. And I'm not sure whether it deals with, because it's showing him starting out. And I don't know if it's like messing with time frames, like we're supposed to believe he's playing himself at his age now at 35 or so, and that he's just starting out, or if he's playing himself in his 20s. But basically the jumping off point of the show is that he's this evangelical Christian, incredibly uptight and naive, almost like a stereotypical Mormon, and hasn't done anything in his life. Never had sex with anybody besides his wife, which, of course, as Catholics find that dandy. But in general, to the world sense, it was a big, it's a big contrast. And then also that he has never drank, he's never done drugs, and he's never, and then he finds comes home, finds his wife in bed with this weird hippie dude, and he pretty much instantly just folds and just says, "I'm out, fine." And he's been struggling as a stand-up in New York while living in the, I guess, Jersey suburbs or somewhere outside the city in a normal neighborhood. And with
a bunch of different people though, because one night it'll be Sarah.
Well, no, I'm talking about at the beginning. He was
right, okay, yeah.
And so he winds up in the city, decided to crash, and so it's his life is crashing upon him, and it's also about him crashing almost every episode in somebody else's place. Usually a celebrity like Artie Lang or Sarah Silverman, all playing themselves as well. And but interesting show because he's not just dealing with that and showing what his life was like starting as a stand-up, but also it deals with his faith journey. And Pete is very outspoken about having been evangelical, that I believe he went atheist or at least very agnostic at one point, and then gradually came back to a more middle-of-the-road form of Christianity, and mixed in with, giving some props to the great thinkers of some other faiths like Buddhism and things like that. So anyways, what do you like about the show and how it deals with these things?
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to get started, that he finds his wife cheating on him, the only woman that he's ever loved and had an intimate relationship with. And it's a challenging way to start, because I think in his head he's like, hey, wait, like I played by all the rules, and then it came back and burned me, which is a really great kind of challenging jumping off point as a theme. We see him on this crash course, and right now he's kind of at that St. Augustine, Lord make me pure but not yet point in his life, where he's wondering, like, well, hey, if the rules burn me, if Catholicism burned me this badly, if Christianity burned me this badly, am I missing out on things? Is it fun to just meet strange women and have one night stands, and will I be happier if I go that route? And so we're at the point in the season where he's testing that out and seeing what's bringing him happiness.
Well, he started having a relationship with somebody after having a one-night stand and misunderstanding what the meaning of that is, that for some women there is no meaning to it. But then they start having a more deepening relationship. Is actually quite touching, I think. Yeah,
it's I love the I'm blanking on what her character's name is in the show.
Allie, I believe.
Allie, okay. Yeah. Allie Reeson, that's what it is. Yeah. And they have a very interesting relationship in the show. And I really liked the finale, because when you watch the
don't give it away to me yet or to the viewers.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
say in general. I haven't seen the finale.
Okay.
Yet. Yeah.
Well, based on how they advertise it in the trailer, it leads you to believe that she will be upset about something. And actually she wasn't. She was totally cool with it. And it's actually Pete who's upset about it. Great season of Pete trying to balance. Can I have it all? Can I have a stable relationship with a woman while still pursuing this stand-up comedy dream of mine that takes up so much of my time, and that you feel like you need to give your all to, even when it's at the expense of having normal relationships with other people.
Well, I mean, do you think, sometimes I wonder, though, like, I'm fascinated by the show because I do stand-up, I believe you do as well.
Right.
So, like, do you think it's as interesting to people that aren't stand-ups or really into stand-up? Because, I mean, there's some episodes where it's like 80% of it is what takes place in the club or on stage or at the college convention or whatever. It seems like really inside showbiz sometimes.
There's definitely a lot of inside baseball, but there are other aspects of the show that I think are just good television. Like, for example, the woman, the guy that his wife cheats on Pete with ends up very strangely becoming a good friend to
Yeah,
Pete.
that's a great character.
Yeah, unbelievable character. And the
Yeah.
dynamic between the two of them where he occasionally finds himself being furious with him, but he also somehow finds a way to forgive him too. And this guy who's sort of a hippie character.
It teaches him a lot about being a little more laid back in life.
He has almost like a kind of a Buddhist mentality, like we're all one and like be connected to the universe mentality. And so the guy's good for him and good for Pete to have around in a lot of ways. But then at the end of the day, he's the guy who took his wife from him, and it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and then the wife is in shock that he's, with her. But even with the relationship with his wife develops in a pretty nice, positive way that they try to, or at least for a while, they try to be friendly after a bit, and it's very well done. I mean, when it comes to relationships, I think it's very interesting, and it shows that the guy's human. I mean, he goes from being, I must be this perfect person, and there's only one way to think, and then becomes realizing sometimes it's not that easy, and everybody goes through ups and downs and doing what we're told is the right thing versus screwing up, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, he's trying to find a way to interpret the challenges that come his way and figure out, okay, well, what's the best way to handle this and to try to set myself up for success in the future. And he goes through a lot of thoughts of like, well, what if Buddhism is right, and when I die, Buddha's going to be pissed at me and send me to hell. And he's having a lot of interesting kind of religious crisis thoughts like that. There's another episode that takes place at a baptism too, which was interesting. And Artie Lang attends the baptism with him, and there's this really funny line, and he's like, with John the Baptist, when that's your name, it kind of takes away other career options for you. Huh?
That's funny. Yeah, well, and then I mentioned a couple weeks back that there's a terrific episode with Bill Burr that has some pretty daring comments about abortion that are really surprising for a show to be on HBO. So at any rate, highly recommend this show. And it's actually pretty soft for an R-rated show, officially TV mature. Most of the time it's, a couple of swear words or something maybe that put it over the line. So if anybody's concerned about that, it's really a pretty laid-back show when it comes to any sort of moral content or whatever.
Yeah, and another cool thing about the show is just how he just the shame that he feels in his life, like when he's it's quote unquote barking when you're just handing out flyers for the comedy club on the street corner and working at Cold Stone, and like he finds himself in these just thankless positions, and he's doing it all because he loves comedy, but like there's sometimes when he's in moments like this where he's like, man, is this all worth it? Like, am I doing the right thing here? And
but then it shows, like, when you actually commit to something, if you have any sliver of talent at it and you put some passion into it, things do, pay off a lot of times, and it has for him, certainly.
He's starting to realize that. Yeah, actually, the episode with the kind of hippie character that we were talking about, there's an episode where Pete follows him around the city, kind of on this sort of spiritual journey, and then he gets a call from a studio to warm up the crowd. I think it was for Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz,
yeah. And he's like, I happen to be 10 minutes away from the studio. And then the friend is like, you see, if you hadn't taken this journey with me today, we wouldn't be standing here right now, and you wouldn't have been 10 minutes away from the studio. And
but then the friend also, I don't want to give away whatever. The friend also gives him like marijuana-laced oil. And Pete's never used drugs before, and he says, here, put this on your hands, not realizing that what's in it, and he winds up high at the Dr. Oz show. It's very funny. But
that shows that's not always black and white, like sometimes something that looks like it could be a good thing ends up being a negative thing, and vice versa. Like and life has very many shades of gray.
Yeah, and and I think also that it'll be interesting to see later this year. Pete's got a book called Gateway God that's going to be coming out, and it's about his faith journey and all the different things he's gone through. And if you're in LA, folks, bonus, if you live in LA, check out a place called Largo. Probably, I think, along with the Upright Citizens Brigade in both LA and New York, the best comedy venue in the country. Maybe okay, Comedy Cellar in New York is also great, but if you're in LA, you got to go see shows at Largo. Pete does a show once a month there called Pete Holmes Living at Largo, and he brings in like huge star friends. Like I went last month, and Adam Sandler showed up and did a half hour of new material unannounced. So
by the way, there's a clip of Adam Sandler in the New York subway, and he disguised himself in a hoodie sweatshirt, and he was